I've been trained as a death doula for the last year and a half, but I've worked with seniors as a companion for advanced dementia for the last 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
I worked through the smaller town that I lived in. There aren't as many resources for end of
Hmm.
life care outside of the major cities. So when a client that I was originally a companion for was diagnosed, say, with a terminal illness, or even just diagnosed, I'll use breast cancer as an example. They're actually palliative care is considered when you have a diagnosis and when you're still going through treatment. So there's a misconception that palliative care means you're dying, and it doesn't. Palliative care means you're just at the beginning of discovering your disease and the process and treatment and all of the stuff behind that. Here in Alberta, and as a death doula, hospice is considered when you have 3 months or less remaining for your life. So when a death doula is, or an end of life doula is hired on, if you are working with the family in person with their initial diagnosis, you get to know their story, their family, how they are, what they wish for their treatment, and what they wish the conversations around the end of your life are really hard. You want to fight cancer, you want to beat it, you want to treat it, and then there comes a subtle point where the treatment isn't working for some people. You've been through the ringer, your cancer spread, and then what do you want for the rest of your life? Do you want to live your best life hiking somewhere with someone pushing you in a chair? Do you want to enjoy less, symptoms from chemotherapy or repeated surgeries? Um, it's really hard for a person who is just diagnosed to think about dying, uh, or for people to talk about the fact that they may die.
Right. Yeah,
It's seen
exactly.
as defeating the purpose of all the treatment. And of course, you have hope. And of course, you're hoping that the treatments work. So opening up the conversation a little earlier helps everyone involved have more support. Um, it's not a rush at the end to find out what someone wanted when they can barely speak. And like your videos and legacy work and projects that you do with families, having an opportunity for them to make a recording, for them to write letters, for them to create this beautiful legacy for their family and to
Mm.
embrace their family and get people visiting who haven't been there. It's um, really helpful to be organized around that. That can even include, having who's going to come and help, who's going to cook meals, who's going to drive to appointments, who lives close by, who's far away. When someone has holidays, can they come and help? So an end of life doula helps with all of the little moving pieces and
Mm.
bits and can help organize and be the consistent support for any caregivers that are present. So we support emotionally, spiritually, practically. We do the legacy projects. We do end of life mapping. We do family meetings. We do various different things for different families. Not everybody
Yeah.
has the same needs. One lady who was passing was most concerned about her dog not going for a walk. So, as an end of life doula, it was one of my roles to exercise her dog and take him out. And she knew she didn't have to worry about her dog. And at that point, that was the most important relationship that she had.
Yeah.
So, there's so many loose ends, and so much of the richness of celebrating a person's life before they're at the end can happen with the facilitation of a doula. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. We in New Zealand we have hospices here. We don't, as I say, doulas are not common, but we do have some. Probably about three in Wellington, I think, and maybe across the whole country there might be 15, maybe qualified.
Yeah.
But it is growing, and there is training being done to get more people into the role. But our hospices are the place where people would go generally in those last 3 months. But there's also a function within hospice here that people don't know much about, which is a daycare units that are available in the hospices from early diagnosis. And
Yeah.
I work at one of those 1 day a month as a volunteer. And to be honest, until I'd started doing that, I didn't know that that service existed. I
Yeah.
also thought that
Yeah.
hospice was just for, when the hospitals say, no, you go to hospice now. And, sometimes it's only a week or two that they're in hospice before they pass.
Yeah.
But there is actually a lot more to it. So I guess there is. I mean, it's nothing like the personal contact of an end of life doula service, but we do have a sort of group facility that people can come to the hospice once a week and just have a day with other people in the same situation, chat about their issues. There are nurses available if they want to see them that have specialist care information that they might need access to. And also, the whole point of it is just so that they get some time to be away from the medical
Yeah.
merry-go-round that they're on the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I find. I see their faces light up, when they come in, because they know they're going to have a lovely morning tea, and we're going to do the crossword, and we're going to maybe do a craft activity or something that, and often, occasionally something might come up, but more often than not, nothing is mentioned about illness. They are just there
Yes. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
enjoy the space. And that's really what I find is so rewarding, because you can't do that in your own house when you've been diagnosed. You've got family around, probably asking questions a lot. You've got doctors always coming and going. It's
Yeah.
really hard
Yeah.
to escape that whole illness environment. But and I guess as a doula, that's something that you would come in and do as well, is to see what it is that matters to them. What, like taking that dog for a walk, or maybe they are worried about losing their ability to paint if they're an artist or something, so you could do some of that with them. I think that's an incredibly important thing to do for someone who's been given a terminal diagnosis, because their life is not ended because of the diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah. It's how to get the most out of what's remaining of your life.
Yeah.
In Canada, but in here in Alberta, the hospice, wonderful. I volunteer at a hospice. Most end-of-life doulas right now here are also in the beginning stages. There were 14 people in the Douglas College end-of-life
Okay.
doula program, and I think 11 out of the 14 were here in Alberta. So they're definitely training more people. There's more interest. There's more questions being asked. The hospice training right now, they're having a big push in Alberta, and they call it the Hospice Roadshow. And the hospices that are available here in Alberta, the statistics, only 16 to 30% of people that need an actual bed in hospice have access to one. And just the
Wow.
tip of the iceberg with the baby boomers, that over the
Mm.
next decade, the hospice volunteer roles won't be enough. Like, people are
Yeah.
already falling through the cracks. And as
Mm.
an end of life doula, I've heard stories from families where they have their loved one at home and they're waiting for a space. Their health deteriorates rapidly. They kind of panic and take them to the hospital, but the hospital system is overwhelmed also.
Yeah.
And with the triage system, if you're dying, unfortunately, there's been instances where, people have died on a gurney in the hallway waiting to be admitted even to the emergency department.
Mm.
So there's been some sad situations that way. And with the
Mm.
bulk of the population just coming in, the role of the doula is,
Mm.
I know, even with childbirth and labor and delivery doulas and postpartum doulas, when
Mm.
having a baby got medicalized and hospitalized, everybody used to have their baby at home unless
Yeah.
it was serious. So I've noticed that there's a lot more people, and the end of, sorry, the birth doulas and midwives have worked really hard at getting back some of that, having babies at home and supporting a woman outside of a clinical hospital setting. Um, the the end of life doula can help with that if there's no space in hospice, but they want to die at home to help. This is what happens as someone is progressing. So people aren't as alarmed. People are prepared.
Mm.
They're going to see things that aren't comfortable, but they know what to expect.
Yeah.
So and that's important because surrounded by loved ones at home, any farmers that I've talked to, anybody that's in a rural area, is actually a really high percentage of people that want to die at home. It's 86% of people say they'd prefer to die at home. And they look at the statistics for how many people actually die at home. And I think it was like 22%. So
Wow.
60% of people that wanted to die at home somehow fell
Mm.
between the cracks with being supported in that wish or desire.
Mm.
So hospice nurses come out if you decide to stay at home. There's
Yes.
palliative care doctors and nurses that will do pain management, that will do assessments. If you have a client that wishes to pass at home, you can let the police department or fire department know. And there's forms that you send out to them. Most people don't know that.
Right.
So when a person passes, someone has to come and verify that they've passed, either an RN, a paramedic, right? So if you have the paperwork all done, it can be sped up and you can put a call
Yes.
into a funeral home. You have time to process your grief. When a person passes away, there's a deep richness and beauty in the after, like immediate after death care. A lot of different societies and cultures, they bathe the body. They
Mm.
perfume and oil the body. The body's wrapped in a shroud. I think as a human, when you see someone who's physically passed, it's a little traumatic for some people, for a lot of
Mm.
people,
Mm.
but that's how you begin to process right there that they're gone. When
Yeah.
you see that and you're not in denial and you're lovingly and tenderly caring for the person as they're dying, and then you're treating their body with dignity and respect. And then, whatever, if you knew the client wanted to be cremated, if you knew the new thing is to be aquamated using a liquid process to break down the body, you can compost a body, so there's all these new sort
Yeah.
of green options in Canada here that are taking
Mm.
hold. So when you know a person's wishes and when you know the family's wishes and the cultural sort of rituals, it's such a beautiful process.
Yeah.
And death seems to be so scary and overwhelming for the majority, I think, of the population. We're working hard to try and change that
Mm. Mm.
and to support that. Some people choose to have a living funeral, where they have a funeral while they're alive, and it's a celebration of life with
Mm.
that person's life included. And I think with what you do with the video and histories, and to be able to record that living funeral and people sharing stories, and that always seems to happen as a person is dying. Lots of people
Yeah.
show up that and they haven't seen each other for a long time. And then the stories start coming out with the funny stories, the sad
Yeah.
stories, the meaningful support. I had a client who was a farmer's wife and she had 7 kids. She would help pull a calf out of a cow. She could toss a hay bale with her pitchfork in one fell swoop. And she was quite a sassy, classy, and funny woman. So it was lovely as all of her 7 kids had started to come. A few of them I helped with using a FaceTime call most seniors don't know how to use a computer, a tablet, an iPad. So I would help her phone and FaceTime her children that lived out of province,
Hmm.
and she would see them, they would joke and talk back and forth as she her dementia progressed, and she wasn't recognizing who she was talking to. Because I'd been involved a little bit sooner, I could
Yeah,
remind her, this is so and so, he's in
of
the
course.
combine, he helped
Mm,
you on the farm. So I wouldn't have known that if I came in right at the end. I
no,
got to
that's
know
right.
her and her family, and I went to the funeral and I cried just as much as they did, but she died a good death. She had a good life and she had a good death. And I think that's a goal I want to help people see, like help people to have. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. If you, just a few years ago, if you'd said, I want to help people have a good death, people would probably go, "What? What
Would
is
go like,
good
oh,
about death?" But
she needs to go see a
yeah,
psychiatrist. She needs some medication, or that's it can be quite with Halloween and with
mm,
movies and with drama.
mm,
It's quite sensationalized with
it is.
media, with um, so I think I've never had so much joy from a job. It's not a job. I have not said, I don't feel like going to work today. I don't,
Yeah,
I go, and if it's emotionally charged and tough, my way to deal with that, I'm a big hiker. I take my lab blue heeler dog. We go to the
yeah,
mountains, about a 3, 4 hour drive from the city. We hike
nice.
for 18 kilometers and I sit and think about my lovely people. I'm getting I'm able to make an income from loving people. I didn't know that was a job.